Paris, 1922. The Countess of Salzmann, one of the most influential women in French high society, abandons her life of luxury to follow a mysterious man who promises to awaken hidden powers in the human mind. This man had no noble title, no fortune, but he possessed something that made kings, counts, and millionaires give up everything to follow him. What you are about to discover will completely change your perception of consciousness, mental power, and the secrets the elites have always hidden from the people. His name was George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, but to those who followed him, he was simply the master. Imagine for a second, you are a European noble. You have castles, servants, political influence. Your family has controlled financial empires for centuries. Then this short man appears, with a thick mustache and a strange accent, and suddenly, nothing else matters. But wait, before I reveal the secret that made these people abandon entire fortunes, you need to know one thing that will shock you. Gurdjieff claimed that 99% of people live in a state of deep sleep. That you, I, all of us, are just biological machines reacting to stimuli. But he said he knew ancient techniques, guarded by secret societies in the East, capable of awakening true human consciousness. And the most impressive part? He proved it in front of everyone. He performed demonstrations that defied reality itself. Want an example? In 1924, in front of 200 people from the Parisian elite, he hypnotized a woman and made her levitate for 30 seconds. Yes, levitate. And this was documented. But hold on, because what I'm about to show you is even more unsettling. Gurdjieff not only mastered these techniques but taught his followers to develop powers that current science still cannot explain: total control over one's own emotions, the ability to read people instantly, telepathic influence over others, and altered states of consciousness on demand. And pay attention, I'm talking about people like the writer P.D. Ouspensky, the architect Frank Lloyd Wright, the composer Catherine Mansfield. People who changed the world. Now do you understand why aristocrats abandoned everything? They weren't buying a philosophy, they were buying real power. But who is this man, really? Where did this impossible knowledge come from? And why, even 70 years after his death, are his techniques still practiced in secret by the world's elites? To understand this, we need to go back to the beginning. To the most mysterious journey ever documented in modern history. George Gurdjieff was born in 1866 in Alexandropol, a city on the border between Armenia and Turkey. But make no mistake, it was not a common childhood. From childhood, he showed extraordinary abilities. At 12, he already spoke 7 languages. At 15, he cured diseases with techniques no one understood. His father was a traditional bard, a storyteller who preserved oral legends of lost civilizations. And it was through these stories that Gurdjieff discovered something that would change his life forever. References to a school of wisdom hidden somewhere in the Himalayan mountains. A school where masters from different traditions, Sufis, Buddhists, esoteric Christians, shared secret knowledge about the nature of human consciousness. And at the age of 20, Gurdjieff disappeared. Literally. For almost 20 years, no one knew where he was. What happened during those 20 years is one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. Gurdjieff claimed to have traveled through regions that didn't even appear on maps at the time. He spoke of secret monasteries in Tibet, Sufi schools in the Gobi Desert, and hidden Christian communities in the mountains of Afghanistan. But here's what's truly impressive: when he returned in 1912, he was no longer the same man. It was as if he had absorbed knowledge from dozens of different traditions and created something completely new. He demonstrated mastery over Buddhist concentration techniques, sacred Sufi dances, Tibetan breathing exercises, and something else, something he called work on oneself. And this is where the story gets truly unsettling. Because Gurdjieff didn't just bring back theoretical knowledge. He brought back practical results that defied everything known about human potential. In 1912, Gurdjieff arrived in St. Petersburg and began teaching a small group of Russian intellectuals. But it was not a common form of teaching. Imagine the scene: an elegant salon in aristocratic St. Petersburg. Men and women of Russian high society, accustomed to the best tutors in Europe. And then Gurdjieff walks in. No ceremony, no formal introductions. He simply looks at a person in the group and says, "You are asleep. Your whole life is a dream. Do you want to wake up?" And then something impossible happened. The person began to notice things about themselves they had never seen before. Behavioral patterns, automatic reactions, thoughts that repeated in endless loops. P.D. Ouspensky, one of Russia's most brilliant mathematicians, described his first experience with Gurdjieff like this: "In 2 hours, he showed me more about my own mind than I had discovered in 30 years of self-observation. It was as if I had lived my entire life with my eyes closed." But this was just the beginning. What Gurdjieff was about to demonstrate went far beyond common psychology. Gurdjieff developed a system he called the Fourth Way, a combination of physical, emotional, and mental techniques that promised to develop what he called the higher self. His students practiced sacred dances, complex movements that required total control over every part of the body while performing mental mathematical calculations. But the most impressive were the stop exercises. Gurdjieff could shout stop, and his students would become completely motionless, frozen in the exact position they were in, for hours if necessary. There is a documented account of a student who remained stopped in the middle of a staircase, with one foot in the air, for over 3 hours. Doctors who witnessed it said it was physically impossible. But what really frightened people was the control Gurdjieff exerted over emotional states. He could make someone feel intense joy or deep sorrow with just a look. Catherine Mansfield, the famous writer, wrote in her diary, "Today Gurdjieff made me experience all possible emotional states in 10 minutes. It was like living a lifetime of feelings in a few moments. Now I understand that what we call emotions are just pale shadows of what is truly possible to feel." With the Russian Revolution, Gurdjieff and his followers had to flee. In 1922, they settled at the Château du Pré, near Paris. And it was there that something unprecedented in history happened. Gurdjieff created what he called the Institute for the Harmonious Development of Man, but it was not a common school. It was a human laboratory where people from all over the world came to undergo a complete personality transformation. The list of visitors reads like a who's who of the global elite: Frank Lloyd Wright, Margaret Anderson, Jean Toomer, Renee Dahmel. They all paid fortunes, the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars today, to spend a few months at the Institute. And they all left completely changed. Frank Lloyd Wright, America's most famous architect, said his experience with Gurdjieff was like being reborn with a new way of seeing and feeling the world. After that, his architecture changed completely. But what really happened inside those walls? What did Gurdjieff do to these people? Gurdjieff's methods were brutal and precise. He believed that to awaken consciousness, one must first break the automatic patterns that control our lives. He made his students work physically to exhaustion, then forced them to perform complex intellectual tasks. When the rational mind collapsed, something new emerged. But there was something even more disturbing. Gurdjieff seemed capable of seeing through the masks people wore. He directly attacked the ego, exposing the lies each person told themselves. A German industrialist reported, "In my first week, Gurdjieff completely destroyed my self-image. He showed me that everything I believed about myself was false. It was terrible and liberating." The ultimate goal was what he called the crystallization of the higher self, the creation of a permanent consciousness that did not depend on external circumstances. And it worked. People who went through the complete process demonstrated extraordinary abilities, absolute emotional control, expanded perception, and something that can only be described as magnetic presence. Gurdjieff died in 1949, but his techniques did not die with him. In fact, they spread to the highest spheres of global power. His direct students founded secret schools in London, New York, Paris. And these schools began to train a new generation of leaders. Today, variations of Gurdjieff's methods are discreetly taught in executive programs of multinational corporations, elite military academies, international diplomatic circles, groups of billionaire investors. Why? Because it works. Gurdjieff's techniques create leaders with superior emotional control, expanded perceptual ability, and natural command presence. But there is an even bigger secret. Something few people know. In the last 20 years, neuroscientists have begun to study practitioners of Gurdjieff's techniques using cutting-edge technology. The results are impressive: permanent changes in brain structure, increased connectivity between hemispheres, and something scientists call enhanced states of consciousness. Dr. Richard Davidson of the University of Wisconsin published, "The neural patterns we observe in advanced practitioners of Gurdjieff's techniques are unique in the scientific literature. They demonstrate cognitive abilities that we considered impossible." In other words, modern science is proving that Gurdjieff was right. It is possible to awaken human consciousness in ways that transcend the normal functioning of the brain. So now you know. The secret that made aristocrats abandon fortunes was not an empty promise. It was access to a technology of human transformation so powerful that even today it is guarded by the world's elites. George Gurdjieff was not just a mystic or philosopher. He was a scientist of human consciousness who discovered how to hack the mind's software. The question that remains is, what would you do if you had access to this knowledge? If this video impacted you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Because next week, I will reveal the specific techniques Gurdjieff used and how you can start applying them today.